Night shift terror. It was just another night shift at the gas station. The dull hum of the fluorescent lights and the occasional rumble of a car engine outside were the only sounds that broke the silence. I had done this job for years, and I had never encountered anything out of the ordinary until tonight. I was restocking the snack aisle when I heard the sound of the bell above the door ringing. I looked up to see a man walking in. He was wearing a hooded sweatshirt and had the hood pulled up over his head, casting his face in shadow. "Can I help you find anything?" I asked, trying to sound friendly. The man didn't say anything. He just walked past me and headed towards the coolers at the back of the store. I shrugged and went back to restocking the shelves. As I was working, I heard the bell above the door ring again. This time, when I looked up, I saw a woman walking in. She looked around nervously before making her way over to the candy aisle. "Is everything okay?" I asked, sensing that something was off. The woman didn't say anything. She just grabbed a few candy bars and brought them up to the counter. I rang her up, and she quickly paid and left. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I looked out the window and saw that it was pitch black outside. The parking lot was empty, except for a few cars parked in the far corner. Suddenly, I heard a banging sound coming from the back of the store. I grabbed a broom and cautiously made my way towards the source of the noise. As I turned the corner, I saw the man from earlier standing in front of the beer cooler, his hood still pulled up over his head. He was holding a crowbar and had smashed open the lock on the cooler door. "What are you doing?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. The man didn't answer. He just lunged towards me, swinging the crowbar. I managed to dodge out of the way, but I knew I was in trouble. I backed away, trying to put as much distance between us as possible. The man followed me, swinging the crowbar wildly. I ducked behind the counter, hoping to find something I could use as a weapon. That's when I heard the woman from earlier screaming. I peeked my head over the counter and saw her running towards the door, her purse flying open and scattering its contents across the floor. The man chased after her, swinging the crowbar. I knew I had to do something to stop him. I grabbed a can of mace from under the counter and ran towards him. I sprayed him in the face with the mace, hoping to blind him long enough for me to get away. But he didn't even flinch. He just kept swinging the crowbar. I tried to fight back, but I was no match for him. He was too strong, too fast. I felt the sharp pain of the crowbar hitting my arm, and then everything went black. When I woke up, I was lying on the floor of the gas station, my head throbbing with pain. The man was nowhere to be seen, but I knew he was still out there, somewhere. I stumbled to my feet and made my way towards the door. I had to get out of there before he came back. But when I opened the door, I saw something that made my blood run cold. The woman from earlier was lying on the ground outside, her body twisted in an unnatural position, and standing over her was the man, his hood still pulled up over his head. He turned towards me and I saw his face for the first time. It was twisted into a sinister grin and his eyes were dark and empty. "I see you're still alive," he said, his voice cold and menacing. I tried to back away, but he was too fast. He grabbed me by the collar of my shirt and pulled me close to him. "You're going to regret ever crossing me," he hissed. I could feel his hot breath on my face, and I knew that I was in grave danger. But then, just as suddenly as he had appeared, he let go of me and disappeared into the night. I stumbled backwards, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't know what to do. I was alone, injured, and terrified. As I looked around, I saw the woman's purse lying on the ground. I knew that I had to call the police. I reached for my phone, but it wasn't in my pocket. I searched frantically, but it was nowhere to be found. I must have dropped it when I was attacked. I was trapped. There was no way for me to call for help, and I didn't know how long it would be before anyone came looking for me. As I sat there feeling helpless and alone, I heard the sound of footsteps approaching. I looked up and saw a police officer walking towards me. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice gentle. I burst into tears, overwhelmed with relief. The officer helped me to my feet and escorted me to his patrol car. As we drove away from the gas station, I saw the man standing in the shadows, watching us go. I knew that he would never forget me, and that he would always be out there, waiting for his next victim. But I also knew that I had survived, and that I would never forget the terror of that night. From that moment on, I vowed to never take my safety for granted. I would always be vigilant, always be aware of my surroundings, and I would never forget the horror of that night and the evil that lurked in the darkness. Gas station encounter. It was a typical Saturday night, and I was on my way home from a long day at work. As I drove down the dark, deserted highway, my gas gauge suddenly dropped to empty. I knew that there was a gas station just a few miles ahead, so I decided to stop there and fill up. But when I arrived, something felt off. The gas station was eerily quiet, and there were no other cars in sight. I shrugged it off and walked inside to pay for my gas. The cashier was a middle-aged woman who looked like she had seen better days. She was huddled behind the counter, staring at the door, as if she was waiting for something to happen. I thought it was strange, but I brushed it off and handed her my credit card. As she ran it through the machine, I heard a strange noise coming from outside. It sounded like someone was dragging a heavy object across the pavement. I looked out the window, but I couldn't see anything in the darkness. Suddenly, the woman behind the counter started to panic. She locked the doors and told me to stay inside, saying that there was a dangerous man outside who had been lurking around the gas station for the past few days. I was terrified, but I tried to stay calm. I asked the woman to call the police, but she told me that the phone lines were down and that we were on our own. We waited in silence for what felt like an eternity, listening to the sound of footsteps and the dragging noise outside. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as I wondered what was going to happen next. Suddenly, the front door of the gas station burst open and a man stepped inside. He was tall, muscular, and covered in tattoos. He had a menacing look on his face, and I could tell that he was dangerous. He demanded that the woman give him all the money in the cash register, and she quickly complied. As he was about to leave, he turned his attention to me. He glared at me, and I could see the anger and aggression in his eyes. I thought it was all over for me, but then he suddenly turned around and walked out of the gas station. The woman and I were both shaken, but we were alive. We decided to wait a few minutes before leaving, just to make sure that the man was gone. As we stood there, we heard the sound of a car engine starting up outside. I peeked out the window, and I saw the man driving away in a beat-up old pickup truck. We breathed a sigh of relief and quickly left the gas station, vowing never to return. The encounter shook me to my core. I couldn't believe that I had come face to face with a dangerous criminal, and that I had narrowly escaped with my life. From that moment on, I made a promise to myself to always be aware of my surroundings and to trust my instincts. I never wanted to be caught off guard again. The experience taught me that danger can lurk in unexpected places and that we should never take our safety for granted. It's a lesson that I will carry with me for the rest of my life. The gas station abduction. It was a quiet night, and I was on my way to visit my friend who lived a few hours away from me. I had driven for hours and my gas was running low. I spotted a gas station in the distance and pulled in to fill up. It was a small old gas station with only one attendant working the night shift. I got out of my car and walked inside to pay for my gas. The attendant was an older man, and his eyes were bloodshot as if he had been up all night. He greeted me with a smile, but something about him gave me the creeps. As I paid for my gas, I heard the sound of a car pulling up. I turned around to see a van parked outside. Two men got out of the van and walked into the gas station. They were both tall and muscular, and their faces were obscured by dark hats and sunglasses. I immediately felt a sense of unease. The older attendant greeted them with familiarity, and they began talking in hushed tones. I could hear snippets of their conversation, but I couldn't make out what they were saying. As I finished filling up my car, I noticed that the two men were staring at me. Their eyes bore into mine, and I felt a sense of dread wash over me. I quickly got into my car and drove away, relieved to be leaving the gas station behind me. But as I drove down the highway, I realized that I had made a grave mistake. I heard the sound of the van behind me, and I could see the headlights in my rearview mirror. The van was following me. I tried to speed up, but the van stayed right behind me. I was trapped with nowhere to go and no one to turn to. As I drove, I saw the van pull up alongside me. The two men were inside, and they were looking at me with cold, dead eyes. One of them rolled down the window and gestured for me to pull over. I knew that I had to do something, but I was frozen with fear. The van pulled in front of me and blocked my way. The two men got out of the van and walked towards me, their faces obscured by their hats and sunglasses. I could see the gleam of metal in one of their hands, and I knew that I was in serious trouble. They opened the door of my car and pulled me out, throwing me into the back of their van. As the van sped away, I realized that I was being abducted. I didn't know where they were taking me or what they wanted from me. All I knew was that I was in grave danger. I tried to scream, but my mouth was covered with tape. I was bound and gagged, and I couldn't move. Hours passed, and I lost all sense of time. The van finally came to a stop, and the two men got out. They dragged me out of the van and into a dark, abandoned warehouse. The warehouse was old and decrepit, with broken windows and peeling paint. It was clear that no one had been there for years. The two men tied me to a chair in the center of the room, and they began questioning me. They asked me about my family, my job, my friends. They wanted to know everything about me. I tried to resist, but they had ways of making me talk. They beat me, tortured me, and threatened me. They made it clear that they weren't going to let me go until they had what they wanted. Days passed, and I lost all track of time. I was hungry, thirsty, and in constant pain. But somehow I managed to stay alive. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I saw an opportunity. One of the men had left the room, leaving me alone with the other one. He was distracted, talking on the phone and not paying much attention to me. I looked around the room, searching for anything that could help me escape, and then I saw it. A rusty nail sticking out of the wall. With all the strength I had left, I managed to free one of my hands from the rope that bound me to the chair. I reached out and grabbed the nail, using it to cut through the rope that bound my other hand. I was free. The man on the phone didn't notice me at first, but when he turned around and saw that I was no longer tied up, he rushed towards me. I grabbed the nail and lunged towards him, using it to defend myself. It was a brutal fight as I pierced him in the eye with the nail. I grabbed his phone and called for help, telling the police everything that had happened to me. The police arrived soon after and arrested the two men. It turned out that they had been abducting people for years, using the gas station as a way to lure in their victims. I was lucky to have survived. The experience changed me in ways that I could never have imagined. I was haunted by nightmares for months, and I had trouble sleeping at night. I became more cautious and paranoid, always looking over my shoulder and avoiding strangers. But I also became more grateful for the simple things in life: a warm bed, a hot meal, the company of loved ones. I learned to appreciate the little moments that make life worth living, and I never forgot the gas station where it all began. Every time I passed by it, I felt a chill run down my spine, remembering the horrors that had taken place there. In the end, I moved away from that part of the country, hoping to leave the memories behind. But I knew that they would always stay with me, a reminder of the darkness that can lurk in the most unexpected places.